What if who you think you are isn't real? Not in a paranoid way, not a glitch in the matrix kind of way, but in the quieter, more painful sense. That the person you've built, the voice you use, the habits you've polished into ritual, are all responses to what the world rewarded. When you were loud, you were noticed. When you were quiet, you were ignored. When you smiled, they clapped. When you hesitated, they withdrew. So you learned. You shaped yourself like clay around expectation. You became fluent in applause. And the mask? It didn't feel like a mask anymore. It felt like survival. It felt like love. But slowly, something else began to ache. Not loudly, just a flicker. A discomfort you couldn't explain. A silence that felt too heavy. And in your quietest moments, when no one was watching, when no one needed you to be anything, you felt it. The tension in your chest, the dull ache behind your eyes. The question, is this really me? Not the version they admire, not the version that wins. The one underneath it all. The one who doesn't need to perform to belong. The one who doesn't need to speak to be understood. The one who has been watching, patiently, from beneath the story. You see, the self you show to the world is like a page in a book. It feels complete, until you realize it's part of a much deeper narrative. A soul-level story. One that can't be tweeted. One that doesn't fit on a resume. One that has nothing to prove. This isn't about rejecting what you've built. It's about remembering what you buried to build it. Because somewhere along the way, your aliveness became conditional. Conditional on being useful, on being wanted, on being right, on being good. But you were whole before you were needed. You were real before you were praised. And nothing can take that away from you. The mask kept you safe, but it also made you forget that the most powerful thing you can be is honest. Not performative honesty, not curated vulnerability, just presence, just being. So the question is not, who do you want to be? The question is, who are you when there's no one left to impress? There's an old story, maybe a dream, maybe a memory, about a child born wearing a mask. Not a frightening one, not a lie, just beautiful, smooth, flawless. People admired it. They called the child gifted, told them to smile, to shine, to keep the mask clean and bright. The child learned quickly. The more perfect the mask, the more love they received. So they polished it. They performed. They adjusted their voice to match it. They tilted their head just right when they spoke. And it worked. The world clapped. They fit in. They excelled. But there was a cost. Each night, after the applause faded and the rooms emptied, the child would feel something. Tight. Not around the mask, but behind it. A quiet pressure. Like something forgotten was still waiting beneath. But no one talked about that. So the child learned to stay busy, to move faster, to sparkle brighter. Years passed. The child grew into an adult. The mask stayed on, more seamless than ever. And yet, the ache remained. Until one day, they met someone who didn't ask for a performance, who didn't look at the mask at all, who simply said, "You seem tired." No judgment, no advice, just truth. The adult froze. No one had said that before, and something cracked. A hairline fracture across the perfect surface. Not enough to ruin it, just enough to feel air on the skin beneath. That night, for the first time, they sat alone and touched the edge of the mask. It didn't resist. It didn't cling. It simply lifted. And underneath wasn't ugliness, wasn't weakness. It was a face they hadn't seen in years. Softer, quieter, real. And for the first time in their life, they exhaled. Not to be impressive, not to be strong, just to be. You spend so long becoming who the world wants that you forget who you are when it's silent. You learn to move like they taught you, speak like they applauded, succeed like they measured. But beneath all of that is someone who doesn't want to be seen, not for validation, but to simply exist without effort. And that part of you isn't loud. It doesn't sell. It doesn't shine for attention. It just is. You don't notice it until the applause fades, until the room's empty, until the noise dies down and the mask becomes too heavy. And suddenly, in that stillness, you hear something. Not a voice exactly, more like a memory, more like a presence. It says, "You're allowed to stop now." Not forever, just long enough to remember who's underneath, because the mask may have helped you survive, but it cannot help you feel. It may have protected you, but it cannot love for you. It may have impressed them, but it cannot comfort you when you're alone. Only your true self can do that. The one who breathes deeper when no one's watching. The one who cries without explanation. The one who doesn't need a reason to just be. And here's the hardest part. This return to self isn't glamorous. It's not a viral breakthrough. It's quiet, messy, sacred in a way that has no language, because you're not becoming someone new. You're remembering someone old. The self that existed before you were told who to be. The self that didn't have a brand. The self that doesn't need to prove anything to be real. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the soul never needed fixing. Maybe it just needed space. Maybe you don't need another version of yourself. Maybe you need less noise, less proving, less performing. And in that less, you find more breath, more feeling, more truth. Because the truth isn't something you build, it's something you uncover, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. And when you finally touch it, even for a second, it feels like peace. Not because the world has changed, but because you finally stopped running from yourself. So now, you sit, not to fix anything, not to become anyone, just to remember, to feel what's beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the stories you've told so well, even you started to believe them. There's no judgment here. Only breath, only presence, only a quiet space that says, "You don't need to perform for me." Because the self beneath the story doesn't need to win, doesn't need to shine, doesn't need to be understood. It only needs to be allowed. And maybe for the first time, you let it. You take off the name, the role, the mask, not to disappear, but to come home. You let the noise drift away like dust in late sunlight. You let your shoulders drop, your eyes soften, your mind unclench. And in that space, something familiar returns. A warmth, a knowing, a presence that doesn't ask for anything, but sees everything. The real you, always here, always waiting. So tonight, don't plan, don't strive. Don't seek the next version of yourself. Just breathe, just be, and let whatever rises, rise without apology. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify softness. You don't have to be more to be enough. The self beneath the story is already whole, already worthy, already yours. And maybe that's what you've been looking for all along. Not a new identity, but a quiet return to the one who was never lost, only forgotten.